All right, lesson 10, 3 to go, folks. Wow. So today, we're basically going to continue on. We'll just jump into our learning objectives. We started last week implementing authentication. We created register and login. We talked about sessions and cookies. We talked about hashing and encryption. And we set up functional register and login pages. But we didn't complete things. For example, there's no way to log out. We haven't actually added a security check. All our pages are still public. And then we also need to talk about a few other things around security. Particularly, we want to talk a little bit about SSL, and we're going to talk about web application security best practices and have a quick look at the OWASP project. So those are all the things we're going to do today. I see some people have already started assignment 2 part 1, which is great. I got some invites to some GitHub repositories. Just a reminder that those are due next week. So I'll actually just come down here. So the end of class, before next week's class, make sure you submit assignment 2 part 1 by Monday. If you need help with it, I've got office hours available Thursday morning that you could book. You'll want to add the code we're doing today to your LAMP food and kind of go over the SSL and OWASP material on your own if you're doing this lesson asynchronously. No quiz this week, okay? So the only thing for next week is just assignment 2 part 1. So let's dive back in. I'm already connected to the VPN, and I already have my XAMPP server running and my PHP Storm code editor open. So give you a minute. If you don't have those things fired up, then you'll want to go ahead and connect to your VPN, start up your web server, and open up PHP Storm. And then we'll just open the project. So here's where we left it last week. So we still have everything is still public. As an anonymous user, I can still go and add new items or edit or delete. But I did have the ability that I could register and log in. So we're going to keep working with this. So if I put in, an invalid login. Oh, okay, we didn't deal with this. We sort of did. Sometimes I get my sections mixed up. So if I put in an invalid login, I get redirected here. And there's also a URL parameter that says invalid equals true. If I use a valid login, and the login we used, I think, was user@gc.ca and test 1, 2, 3, 4, I think. Just confirm that. When I put in a valid login, I get redirected to the grocery list. So we do want to deal with our invalid login attempts. So it keeps me on the right page, but there's no message to the user telling them the login is invalid. So we're going to add a little logic. We're going to start here on our login screen. So let's open this file up in our code editor. I'm actually going to close everything except login. And while I'm at it, people did mention this in the midterm, and I meant to address it last week, so maybe I'll do it right now. People said, our project's getting really big, which is true. And a lot of these files, they were just kind of like for demonstration purposes, but we're not actually using them. So I'm maybe going to move some of them into a separate subfolder. So I'm just going to right-click my project. And I'm going to open it in my File Explorer. So in here, I'm going to make a subfolder. You don't have to do this. I'm just trying to clean the project up a little bit. So I'm going to make a new folder here. I'll just call it old files. I'm going to move some of the pages that we don't really need in here. So our connect page, I'm going to move here. Our items, simple query, our page 1, page 2. You can see all the ones I'm highlighting. Our sample header, select an item, and server. So these 8 files are ones we've kind of built during the lesson, but they're not really part of the lamp food application, as well as display item. I guess there's 9. So these 9 files, they're not like we're not linking to them anywhere. So you can see them all highlighted in blue. I'm going to move these all into the old files directory. All the other files we're actually using. So I can just move those into old files. So now our site is a little simpler. We've got 16 files, and 9 of them we've moved out of here because we're not really working with them anymore. You don't have to do this. I just think it'll clean up our project a little bit. So in our login page, right, when we enter an invalid credential, we get redirected back to this page, and it now says invalid equals true. So we want to add a message in red here. When we've got this URL parameter on the end, we need to show the user some kind of invalid login message. So we'll do this maybe here underneath our H1 tag, but above our form. Let's add a set of PHP tags, and we can add on an if statement here. So we'll say if not empty, if we have a URL parameter in get called invalid, then we're going to print out this. I'll use the alert danger class. So we're going to print a banner in red across the top above the form. So if we've got a URL parameter that says invalid, if we don't, so the user's coming to the login page for the first time, we'll add maybe a blue banner instead. So we're going to display one of these 2 divs. Alert info will be kind of like use a light blue background color. But if the users tried to log in and their login attempt failed and we brought them back here, we're going to show them this instead. So let's try this out, see what it looks like. There is an ending anchor tag because I made a mistake and your debugging skills are very good. Thank you, Jacob. Okay, so let's try this out. And then I'll put it up on Pastebin if anybody needs access to it. So when I click on login and it originally loads, we get the blue banner, the alert info. But if I put in an invalid login, right, because we have this invalid parameter, we don't even really care whether it's true or false. If this parameter is here at all, we're going to show the red alert that says invalid. And if there's no URL parameter because the user clicked the link, we're going to show this. So I'm going to set that again underneath my H1, but above the form. So we're using Bootstrap for a little formatting, and we're using PHP with a little bit of logic. So we can toggle the message that shows on this page. Anybody have any questions about this little block of code here, where we're using a PHP decision and we're using Bootstrap formatting to display two different messages in two different colors, depending on our scenario? I'm going to assume silence is good. If it's not, if I'm going too fast or you want me to go back a step, let me know. Okay, thanks, Ivan. So the next thing we want to do, now that we've kind of cleaned that up, is we still haven't actually implemented any authentication, right? As an anonymous user, I still can come in and change data. I can edit, I can delete, even without being logged in. So what we want to do, we've got several pages. There's 3 pages on our site that we want to restrict access to. If you look at our pages over here, which 3 files, or use the chat, tell me what's one of the files that we should be restricting access only to users who are authenticated. Okay, absolutely, Megan. If you're not logged in, we don't want you to be able to delete. That's one. Yep. Which other files do we want to block access to if somebody is anonymous? Yep, so that would be our item details, right, for editing. Yep. And there's one more page kind of connected to this one for editing. Okay, Chris, that's kind of an interesting one. What we're going to do with this one is going to be a little different. We're going to allow an anonymous user to see the list, but what we can do is add some logic so that they don't see the add, edit, or delete links unless they're logged in. Now, that's just the way we'll implement it, so we can see how that's done, but it's not wrong. I mean, you could deny access entirely to the grocery list if you wanted to. I think we're going to do it so that an anonymous user sees this in a read-only format, whereas an authenticated user sees it with the links. So there's still one more page that's going to need access control. We get delete item. We've got item details. Thanks, Megan. And we've also got save item. So all 3 of these pages need the exact same logic. Right? We don't need too many lines of code, but we need to check, is the user logged in, yes or no? Oh yeah, that's true. I suppose we should do it on the category details and save category. Good point. I guess there's 5 pages. Wasn't thinking about the categories, but you're right, Megan. Again, if someone's not logged in, we don't want them to be able to change categories. So we've got 5 pages. So we only need about 4 or 5 lines of code to check, but we don't, instead of duplicating that code on all of these pages, what would be the most efficient way for us to write that authentication check? How could we write it so that we write it in one place, but we can apply it on all 5 of the pages we've just talked about? Right. Good guess, Ivan. Yeah, Chris, that's what I was thinking. Let's write our little authentication check, or Megan, you suggested, like our database file. Let's put it in its own file, and then we can just include it. So that way we don't have to copy a whole block of code for each of these pages. So we'll make another include file. So I'm going to make a new PHP file. I like using short names for the include files because easy to link them in. We'll just call this auth.php. We can take out all the HTML. This is a code only, it's logic only. There's no HTML presentation. So basically, we want to check if user is authenticated. If not, redirect to login. So how can we check? How do we know if our user is authenticated or anonymous? I'll give you a hint. I mean, look at the page that checks the user logins that we wrote last week. Okay, Megan, yeah, you're on the right track. Which page will tell us? When someone goes to log in, which page does the checking? How can we tell from this file, where does this login form go? Right, in the session object. And Chris, where is the session object set? Which one of our pages sets it when somebody logs in? Be the page that's checking our login attempts. You got it, Quinlan, right? Because our login page, it posts to validate.php. And what happens on validate, right? We take their username and password. First, we see if the username is in the database, as Megan said. And then, as Chris said, if it is, we then hash and verify their password. And then we do this. We connect to the existing session, and we're storing their email in a session variable called username. So in our auth, we want to check if this variable exists or if it's empty. If it's empty, the user isn't logged in. If it's not empty, the user has authenticated, and we're going to let them carry on. So first, we have to access the current session. Then we're going to check if the username, if this user's username is stored in a session variable. If not, go to login. So we only need 3 lines of code for this. First, we just call session start. So anytime we want to read or write a session variable, we need to call session start. So if there is no session variable called username, that means this user isn't logged in. Either they've never logged in, or they logged in and their session has timed out from inactivity. So I'll just move this comment here. So if this variable is empty, we're going to use header location to take them back to login, and then we're going to call exit. So no other code on the page will execute. So here's our simple auth file. We're going to access the current session. We're going to see if there is a session variable called username. And if there isn't, we're going to take them back to the login screen. So now we can include this file on the 5 files we identified in the chat. Delete, and I have all of these open. I'll actually close up login. So delete, item details, and save item, as well as save category and category details. Oops. I can put this up on Pastebin. We should call exit because if there's some other redirect or something else happening on the page after that, code might still execute even after calling header location. So it is best to call exit in that case. It is safer to do that, Chris. You might get an unexpected result if you don't. So I would recommend a yes. But thank you for asking the question. So here's our auth.php. So I'm now going to include it. I'll maybe go to item details first. So right here up at the top, before we do anything else now, we can just include our auth file. So this should now make this page private. Only when you're logged in can you get here. So the simple way for me to try this is to use 2 different browsers. Either use Firefox and Chrome or use 2 windows, one that's a private window because the sessions won't carry over from one window to another if I'm in private mode. So let me try this. So I'm going to go to my grocery list. I'll click on add an item. So right now in Firefox, I'm logged in. So it lets me access the item details page. But if I copy that and jump down to Chrome, which I know you can't see, so I'll bring it over here. Right. Now our auth check is working. Again, I go here and I click on either add or edit. It doesn't matter because both of them go to item details. When I try to load it, our authentication check has locked me out now. So it's working the way we want it to. So we're going to copy this, include, to the 4 other files that are open on my screen. I'll copy it. I can just put it here where we've already got an opening PHP tag. Doesn't matter if it's really right at the top or not. So I've put it in delete, and I'm going to put it in save item, save category, and category details. So this will mean anonymous users can no longer change any of the data. They can't add categories, and they won't be able to add, edit, or delete items. So in my save item, I'll put it in here. Again, just wherever I've got my first PHP tag is probably okay. If you want to put it right at the top of the file too, that's fine. Save category. I'll add it in. Now, category details, this file's only HTML, so I'm going to need PHP tags for this here. So all of these files are now secured. Okay, so again, in Chrome, even if I try to go to, let's say, delete item.php, I'm going to get bounced back to the login screen. So our pages, 5 pages are secured now. And category details, save category, save item, item details, and delete item. They all have this same little block of code. So now we want to deal with the links on this page. So yes, I can't actually add, edit, or delete in Chrome where I'm an anonymous user, but I still see these links. And generally, it's not a good idea to show users anything that they don't have permission to access. It's better to actually hide it from them. So we want to add some logic on our items page that will show or hide this link as well as this heading and these columns. As well as we also made the item name clickable too. We don't even want that to be a link. We just want it to be static text. So we're going to need 4 if statements on this page. I'm going to open up the items page and it's really going to be the same logic we're going to check repeatedly. So the first place we're going to do this is on line 5. We've hard-coded this link that says add an item. I'll just indent it. So in here, I'll just move my link. I'll call session start. And then we'll say if not empty, session username. So we'll only print out this link. We'll only print out this link if there's a username in the session. Here's this little. And I guess I can even just use the same set of PHP tags. So I'll just add this inside the existing. So I'm going to try this in Chrome. If I refresh the items page in Chrome, my add an item link at the top, it should be hidden. I shouldn't see this. In Firefox, where I'm logged in, I have this link. But now in Chrome, that link's gone. So I no longer even know there's an ability to add to the list. Now, we called session start up at the top. We don't have to call session start again on the same page. So we can read this session variable again. Further down, we only have to call session start once. So now we need to deal with the other sections. We don't want these to be links for anonymous users, and we don't want to even see this column at all. We won't see an actions heading. We won't see edit and delete buttons. So I'm going to scroll down here first to my line 28. This is where we have our table and our headings. Looks like I've got an extra heading in here anyway. I should delete. So after the quantity heading, I'm going to end that echo command, because our next heading is going to be wrapped in an if statement. So add a single quote and a semicolon at the end of that line where we're printing out our table. Easier if I do it like this. That way you can see the whole command. And we're going to check the same variable. If it's not empty, so if our user's logged in, we're going to print that fourth column heading. And then I need to end my table header. So our table might have three, it'll always have the first three headings. But it's only going to have the fourth heading when our user is logged in. And then in any case, we'll end the table header. We'll do the same thing around this last column in our loop that starts here on line 43. We open a column, and then we've got our edit and delete links. So after my quantity column, again, I'm going to end the echo statement. And I'm going to use the same check for the third time. So we're only going to print out this column when the user's logged in. So now we should have kind of two different views of the same page. So we're definitely printing out the first three columns, but the fourth column only gets rendered when we have a session variable. I'll try it out. I'll go back to the code. So in Firefox, I'm logged in. It looks the same as it always did. In Chrome, where I'm anonymous, we get this view. Now these are still links. So this is the last item I'm going to clean up. I will post the whole finished version in a minute. So I also now need an if statement here, because we're displaying the name as a link the user can click. We only want to do this when they're logged in. Otherwise, we want to display the food name, but just as text that the user can't click on, can't interact with. So after my first column here on line 1, again, I'm going to end my echo statement. So I'm going to take this column, the second column that has a link and prints the item name. That's going to go in here. So when they're logged in, we're going to show a link. If the user's not logged in, we're just going to print the item name as text with no anchor tag. So this is going to remove the links for anonymous users. Just print the food names as text. If the user's logged in, then it's going to look the same as it always has. I'm just going to try this and make sure it's right, and then I'll put the code back up and I can share it as well, if that helps. I know it's lots of small syntax changes, so it can be easy to get a little bogged down in the quotes and the concatenating. So in Firefox, this page should look the same, which it does. And in Chrome, these links should become just plain text, which they are. So two versions of the same page, depending on the status of our user. Here's the cleaned up code if you need to refer to any of it. I'm going to put it up on GitHub shortly as well. So yes, complicated. So we've actually used this same check 4 times. For our add link, for our actions heading, for the item names, so we know we're going to display them either way, but we're determining whether we're including anchor tags or not. And then for our edit and delete buttons. So implementing the authentication, our syntax is tricky. I don't think the concept should be that complex. A logged in user, we can identify in the session variable. And we can show or hide things or grant or deny access to entire files simply based on that session variable. Does anybody have questions about the process of how we've implemented this, either by controlling access at the page level or controlling access to individual pieces within a page? It's pretty normal to have this kind of logic inside of a web page. If we look at the same thing on D2L, for example, if you go into the lesson 10 folder, we're looking at the same physical page and URL. The difference is I have other options like these little arrows and checkboxes that you don't have. Because in D2L, there's checking to see not only are we logged in, but then the next level of authorization. What permission levels do you have as students? What permission levels do I have as an instructor? And because I have instructor permissions, there are decisions on this page that show me these visual elements that I can interact with. you as a student won't see them. So under the hood, there's logic on these pages that show or hide different things depending on who the user is and what they're allowed to do. So we're doing this at a fairly simple level, even though the syntax can trip us up rather easily. Now, if I go back here in Firefox, if we kind of look at these side by side, I would suggest there's one other kind of visual thing that we're missing here in terms of authentication. If you look at these side by side, so, my Chrome version, I'm logged in. Sorry, my Chrome version, I'm anonymous. My Firefox version, I'm logged in. What else are we missing that we would expect to see on any website that has some sort of login functionality? We can register, we can log in, we are controlling access, but there's some visual cues that aren't here. Okay, you guys, man, you guys are good. Right. Okay. So as Megan and Chris says, in the header, there's no indication, right? The headers look the same. So we don't know, we can't actually tell if we're logged in or not. And as Adam also mentioned, there's no way to log out. So right now, the only way I can log out of my Firefox session is either to close my browser entirely or wait 20 or 30 minutes for this to time out. But if I've got to leave and I want to make sure no one gets in here, I need log out. So we want to add this stuff to the header. We want to add a couple items to the header, as well as some logic that an anonymous user, so when I'm in Chrome, I should see these links. If I'm logged in Firefox, these should be hidden, and I want to see my username and log out, and I also want to put them up here. So we're going to build a really simple logout page. Very easy to do in PHP. So let's go ahead and make a new file, first called logout, and then we'll interact with our header. We should be able to do this fairly simply before we have a break. So we're going to make a new PHP file called logout. This is a hidden page. It just signs the user out, and then we want to take them back to the login screen. So all the HTML here, it can go. We need to access the current session, remove all session variables, terminate the session, and redirect to login. So even though we're getting rid of the session, we still have to access it with session start. To get rid of any of the session variables, we call session unset. We then call this, in my favorite method in PHP, session destroy. We're going to take the user back to login, and just to be safe, to make sure no other code executes, we're going to call exit. So access the session, get rid of any variables that are being stored, remove it from memory, take the user back to the login screen. So to try this, we can add a link in our header to log out. We can log in. When we're logged in, we should see this. And if we log out and then go back to the items list, we should see this. That's not the right place to paste it. This logout page is very generic. We can use it for any PHP application. I'm not going to consider it misconduct if you use this page verbatim. Okay, you can just use it, you can copy it, it's fine. There's really no other way to do this. So you can repurpose this page as it is without fear. So let's open up the header. I'll just copy my login link and add a logout link. We won't put any logic in the nav bar yet about what to show and what to hide. We'll maybe do that after the break. So just copy lines 31, 32, and 33, your login link. Just make a new link that goes to logout. And then we can test this. So in Firefox, we can see I'm still logged in, right? I have access to everything. As soon as I click log out, I get kicked back here. And now when I go to the grocery list, notice my session's been terminated. When I log back in, I now have access to add, edit, and delete again. So we're almost there. We still don't have any indication visually from the header. Are we logged in or not? We don't want to see all three of these links together. We either see these or we'll see this plus the username. So we've done a fair bit with this. I think what I'd like to do is upload this right now to GitHub, take a 10-minute break here, and let's come back at 3. We'll finish this off. We'll add a little bit of functionality to our register page, and then I want to spend a few minutes talking about SSL and OWASP today. Okay, so we will come back in 10 minutes. I'm going to upload all the code now.